My name is Maya Richardson, and I've been a data strategist at Thornfield Consulting for 3 years. 3 years of building models that save clients millions, 3 years of spotting trends that others miss, and 3 years of watching my work get presented by someone else while I sit in the corner, invisible. The conference room smells like stale coffee and the particular brand of arrogance that comes with six-figure salaries. I'm 15 minutes early, as always, laptop open, reviewing the quarterly projections I've been working on for weeks. The numbers tell a story that could reshape our entire approach to the Henderson Industries account, a $40 million opportunity that everyone's been scrambling to crack. Maya, you're here early again. David Chen slides into the seat across from me, not looking up from his phone. He's the VP of strategy, technically my boss, though he's only 2 years older than me and has half my experience in data analytics. Making sure you're prepared for the big meeting? There's something in his tone, a condescending edge wrapped in fake concern. I've heard it before. The implication that I need extra preparation time, that I'm not naturally equipped to handle these high-stakes discussions. Just reviewing the Henderson projections, I say, keeping my voice level. The trend analysis shows some interesting patterns in their Q3 spending that could inform our pitch. David finally looks up, his expression shifting to mild interest. Oh, right, the spending patterns. I've been meaning to dive deeper into that data. You've been meaning to. As if the 40 hours I spent building those models were just preliminary work waiting for his genius to unlock their true potential. Marcus Webb enters next, his expensive suit making the rest of us look underdressed. He's the kind of guy who uses words like synergy and paradigm shift unironically, the kind who somehow gets promoted despite never producing anything measurable. He nods at David, completely ignoring me, and launches into a story about his golf game with someone from the Henderson team. So I'm on the 9th hole with their CFO, and he mentions they're hemorrhaging money on operational inefficiencies. I'm thinking, this is exactly the kind of problem Thornfield can solve. I bite my tongue. The operational inefficiencies he's referring to are laid out in excruciating detail in my analysis. I've identified exactly where Henderson is losing money and calculated the potential savings down to the percentage point. But Marcus talks about it like it's some casual revelation he had between golf swings. Sarah Kim walks in with her usual confidence, the kind that comes from being one of the few women in leadership who's managed to crack the boys' club. She gives me a tight smile, the kind that says I see you, but I can't afford to be seen supporting you too openly. Morning team, ready to wow the executives? The room fills up quickly after that. Regional directors, account managers, senior analysts, all here for the quarterly strategy review. I recognize most of them, though I doubt they could pick me out of a lineup. I'm the data person, the one who produces the spreadsheets and charts that make their presentations possible. Jennifer Torres, our CEO, enters with her usual commanding presence. She's the kind of leader who can silence a room just by walking in, and today she's flanked by 2 board members I recognize from company-wide meetings. This is bigger than I thought. All right, let's see what you've got, Jennifer says, settling into her chair. I want to understand where we stand with Henderson Industries and what our path forward looks like. David stands up, clicking to the first slide of what I immediately recognize as my presentation. My charts, my analysis, my recommendations, all branded with his name in the corner. Jennifer, board members, thank you for your time. I've been conducting a deep dive into Henderson's spending patterns, and I believe we've identified some significant opportunities. I've been conducting. The words hit me like a physical blow. I spent weeks on this analysis, staying late, working weekends, diving into financial reports that would make most people's eyes glaze over. And now, David is presenting it like it's his own work. He clicks to the next slide. My trend analysis showing Henderson's operational spending by quarter. As you can see, there's been a 23% increase in their operational costs over the past 18 months, with the most significant spikes occurring in Q1 and Q3. I want to speak up, to add the context about seasonal fluctuations and the correlation with their acquisition timeline. But David keeps talking, and the moment passes. The key insight here, he continues, is that these aren't random cost increases. They're following a pattern that suggests systemic inefficiencies in their supply chain management. I watch Jennifer's face as she studies the charts. She's engaged, asking good questions, and David is fumbling some of the answers. He doesn't understand the methodology behind the analysis, doesn't know the assumptions I built into the models. David, Jennifer interrupts, these projections assume a 15% reduction in operational costs. What's that based on? David pauses, clicking back to the previous slide. Well, based on industry benchmarks and our assessment of their current processes. He's giving a vague answer because he doesn't know the specific calculations. I built those projections using regression analysis based on similar companies that had implemented efficiency programs. I have the data, the comparisons, the confidence intervals. I clear my throat softly. Actually, that 15% figure comes from… Maya, let David finish his presentation first. Sarah interrupts, not unkindly, but firmly. We'll have time for questions afterward. But we won't. There's never time for questions afterward, not real ones. The meeting will end, people will file out, and the decisions will be made in smaller rooms that I'm not invited to. David continues, stumbling through explanations of concepts he doesn't fully grasp. I watch board members exchange glances, their initial interest fading into polite attention. They can sense that something's off, that the presenter doesn't have command of his material. So, our recommendation, David concludes, is a comprehensive efficiency audit, followed by a phased implementation of our proprietary optimization framework. Jennifer nods slowly. And what's the timeline on this? How quickly can we show results? Another pause. David looks at his slides, then back at Jennifer. I'd estimate 6 to 8 months for full implementation. I actually wince. The timeline I calculated was 12 to 14 months for full implementation, with initial results visible in 4 to 6 months. David's cutting the timeline in half, probably because he thinks it sounds more impressive. That seems aggressive, one of the board members observes. What's the risk profile? David's now completely out of his depth. He's talking about risk mitigation strategies that don't exist, promising deliverables that aren't feasible with the timeline he's proposed. I can feel my heart racing. This is my work being butchered in real time, my reputation tied to promises I know can't be kept. But the familiar voice in my head whispers the questions I've learned to ask. Are you sure you're right? Are you being too aggressive? Maybe David knows something you don't. Except I am sure. I've run the numbers a dozen different ways. I've built sensitivity analyses and stress-tested every assumption. The timeline is what it is because that's what the data supports. Jennifer, I say, my voice cutting through David's rambling explanation, I have some additional context on the timeline that might be helpful. The room goes quiet. David stops mid-sentence, his face flushing slightly. Sarah gives me a warning look. But Jennifer turns to me with genuine interest. Go ahead, Maya. The 15% efficiency target is based on regression analysis of 8 comparable companies that implemented similar programs. The average implementation time was 13 months, with a standard deviation of 2.3 months. Promising 6 to 8 months would require cutting corners that could jeopardize the entire program. I can feel the temperature in the room shift. David's looking at me like I've just committed corporate treason. Marcus is shaking his head slightly, as if to say, here she goes again. The risk, I continue, is that if we push too hard on the timeline, we end up with a partially implemented system that doesn't deliver the promised results. Henderson would be worse off than when we started. Jennifer's nodding, but I can see David's jaw tightening. He's going to make me pay for this later. Maya raises good points, Jennifer says diplomatically, but I think we need to balance thoroughness with urgency. David, can you work with Maya to refine the timeline? Work with Maya. As if I haven't been working on this all along. As if this isn't my analysis being presented under his name. The meeting continues for another 20 minutes, with David trying to regain control of the presentation, while I sit in increasingly frustrated silence. When Jennifer finally dismisses the group, I watch everyone file out, chattering about lunch plans and afternoon meetings. David hangs back, pretending to pack up his materials while the room empties. When we're alone, he finally speaks. Maya, I need to talk to you about professional boundaries. Professional boundaries. Here we go. You undermine me in front of the CEO and board members. That's not how we work as a team. I was trying to prevent us from making promises we can't keep, I reply, keeping my voice steady. Those timelines aren't realistic based on the data. The data, David repeats with a slight emphasis that makes it sound like a dirty word. Maya, you're brilliant with numbers, but you don't understand the bigger picture. Sometimes you have to be ambitious to win business. You don't understand the bigger picture. Translation, you're just the data person. Leave the strategy to the real professionals. David, with respect, I've been doing this analysis for 3 years. I understand both the data and the business implications. His expression hardens. Maya, I'm going to be frank with you. Your attitude lately has been concerning. You're very intense, very focused on being right, and it's creating tension in the team. Intense, focused on being right. These are the words they use when they want to make you smaller, when they want to turn your expertise into a character flaw. I'm focused on delivering accurate analysis, I say. Isn't that what you hired me for? I hired you to support the team, not to second-guess strategy decisions in front of leadership. There's a difference between being thorough and being difficult. Difficult. There it is. The word that follows women around corporate America like a shadow, especially Black women who have the audacity to know things. I wasn't being difficult. I was being accurate. David sighs. The kind of performative sigh that says, I'm trying to be patient with you, but you're making it hard. Maya, I need you to think about how you come across to others. Your tone, your body language, it can seem aggressive, confrontational. That's not the culture we're trying to build here. My tone, my body language, the way I take up space in rooms full of people who look nothing like me. I'll keep that in mind, I say, because what else can I say? That his feedback is a masterclass in coded language? That he's essentially telling me to be less competent, less confident, less black? Good. I think we have a great opportunity with Henderson, and I want to make sure we're all aligned moving forward. We're all aligned. As if alignment means accepting that my work will be presented under his name while I sit quietly in the corner. After he leaves, I sit alone in the conference room, staring at my laptop screen. The numbers are still there, still correct, still mine. But in a few hours, they'll be part of a proposal with David's name on it, part of a strategy that will be credited to everyone but me. I think about my grandmother, who cleaned office buildings for 40 years and never once had her name on anything she touched. She made those buildings spotless, but the credit went to the companies that hired the cleaning service. At least she got paid for her labor. Here, I'm salary, which means my nights and weekends belong to Thornfield Consulting, and my ideas belong to whoever's brave enough to present them. My phone buzzes with a text from my sister. How's the corporate life treating you, Maya? I stare at the message, not sure how to answer. How do you explain that you're successful by every metric that matters? Salary, title, responsibilities, but you feel invisible? How do you tell someone that you're living your dream job while slowly disappearing? It's complicated. I text back. Complicated how? I start typing several responses and delete them all. How do you explain microaggressions to someone who's never experienced them? How do you describe the slow erosion of being overlooked, interrupted, ignored? Just work stuff. I'll call you later. The afternoon drags on. I'm supposed to be working on other projects, but I can't stop thinking about the Henderson presentation, about the way David stumbled through my analysis, about the board members' confused faces, about Jennifer's diplomatic attempt to bridge the gap between David's promises and my reality. Around 4 p.m., I get an email from David's assistant. Maya, David would like you to prepare additional analysis on the Henderson timeline. He'd like options for accelerating implementation. Please have this ready by EOD tomorrow. Additional analysis. Translation. Fix the mess I created by making unrealistic promises. I stare at the email for a long time before responding. I'll prepare a comprehensive timeline analysis with various scenarios and their associated risks. It's professional. It's helpful. It's exactly what a good team player would do. But inside, I'm screaming. That evening, I stay late again, building models that David will present as his own work. I create scenarios for 6-month, 8-month, 10-month, and 12-month implementations, complete with resource requirements, risk assessments, and probability of success calculations. The 6-month timeline has a 15% chance of success. The 8-month timeline, 35%. The 12-month timeline, 78%. The data doesn't lie, even when we want it to. I'm putting the finishing touches on the analysis when I hear footsteps in the hallway. It's almost 9 p.m., and I assumed I was alone. Marcus Webb appears in my doorway, loosening his tie. Maya, burning the midnight oil again? I look up from my screen. Just finishing up the Henderson analysis. Ah, the Henderson analysis. He steps into my office, uninvited. David mentioned you had some concerns about the timeline. Concerns? As if mathematical reality is a matter of opinion. I'm just making sure we have realistic expectations, I say carefully. Marcus nods, but there's something in his expression that makes me uncomfortable. You know, Maya, I've been in this business for 15 years. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't being wrong. It's being right at the wrong time. I'm not sure what he's trying to tell me, but it doesn't feel like friendly advice. What I mean is, he continues, sometimes you have to trust that leadership knows what they're doing. David's got a good relationship with Jennifer, and he understands how to position things strategically. Trust that leadership knows what they're doing, even when the data shows they're wrong. I understand, I say, though I don't. I understand that my job is to provide accurate analysis, not to massage numbers until they tell the story leadership wants to hear. Good, I knew you would. Marcus smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. You're smart, Maya, really smart. But smart isn't always enough in this business. You need to be strategic too. After he leaves, I sit in the growing darkness of my office, watching the city lights twinkle outside my window. Smart isn't always enough. Another coded message in a day full of them. I think about my college roommate, Keisha, who went to law school and now works for a civil rights organization. She calls me every few months to check in, and she always asks the same question. Are you happy? I never know how to answer. I have the career I thought I wanted, the salary I dreamed of, the respect that comes with being good at what you do. But happiness? That's more complicated. I'm good at my job. I'm really good at it. But being good at something and being valued for it aren't the same thing. I can build models that predict market trends with 87% accuracy. I can spot inefficiencies that save companies millions. I can turn chaos into clarity with a spreadsheet and a few hours of focused work. But I can't make people see me when I'm standing right in front of them. The Henderson timeline analysis is finished. Tomorrow, David will present it as his own work. Jennifer will praise him for his thoroughness, and I'll sit in the corner taking notes on my own ideas. But as I pack up my laptop, an idea begins to form. Next month, there's a quarterly review meeting with the entire executive team, a chance to present directly to Jennifer and the board about our overall strategy and performance. David will be there, of course, along with all the other senior staff. What if I prepared something independent? Not just analysis supporting someone else's presentation, but my own comprehensive review of where we stand and where we're going, not to undermine anyone, but to be ready if the opportunity arises. I think about my grandmother again, how she always said, "Baby, you can't control what people see, but you can control what you prepare for them to see." Maybe it's time to prepare something they can't ignore. Maybe it's time to make sure that when the CEO asks whose numbers these are, I'm ready to answer. 3 weeks later, I'm standing outside the executive conference room with a manila folder in my hands and my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside that folder is everything. 3 weeks of after-hours work, weekends sacrificed, sleep lost. A comprehensive strategic analysis that I know could change everything. The quarterly executive review. The meeting where decisions get made that shape the company's direction for months. I wasn't originally invited to present, of course. I'm here as David's data support, which means I'm supposed to sit quietly and provide backup information if asked. But the folder in my hands contains more than backup information. It contains a complete alternative strategy, built from the ground up with data they haven't seen, projections they haven't considered, and recommendations that directly contradict the plan David's about to present. I've been over it 100 times. The numbers are solid. The methodology is bulletproof. The conclusions are unavoidable. But standing here, watching the regional directors file into the conference room in their expensive suits, I feel the familiar doubt creeping in. What if you're wrong? What if you're overstepping? What if this destroys your career? I shake my head, trying to silence the voice. I'm not wrong. I spent 3 years building the expertise to make this analysis, and 2 more years watching that expertise get ignored. Today, that changes. The conference room is fuller than usual. Jennifer sits at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by 3 board members I recognize and 2 I don't. Regional directors occupy the sides, with laptops open and coffee cups steaming. The quarterly review is serious business, the kind of meeting that determines budgets, promotions, and strategic direction. I take my usual seat in the back corner, close enough to be available if needed, far enough away to remain invisible. David's at the front, adjusting his tie and testing the projector. Marcus is 2 seats down from Jennifer, already deep in conversation with one of the board members. "Good morning, everyone," Jennifer begins, her voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. Let's dive into Q3 performance and our strategic outlook for the rest of the year. The first hour is routine. Financial results, operational updates, market analysis. I half listen while reviewing my folder one more time, making sure every page is in order. When Jennifer announces that David will present the strategic recommendations for our largest accounts, my attention snaps back to the room. "Thank you, Jennifer." David stands, clicking to his first slide. "I want to start with Henderson Industries, our biggest opportunity this quarter." My stomach drops. It's my presentation again. The same charts, the same analysis, the same unrealistic timeline. But this time, he's presenting it to the people who will actually make the funding decisions. Based on my analysis of Henderson's operational patterns, David continues, we've identified a pathway to 15% cost reduction through systematic efficiency improvements. My analysis. The words feel like a slap across the face, but I keep my expression neutral. Around the table, board members are nodding, taking notes. Jennifer looks engaged, asking the kinds of probing questions that show she's taking this seriously. The timeline is ambitious but achievable, David says, clicking to the implementation schedule. We're looking at 6 to 8 months for full deployment, with initial results visible within the first quarter. One of the board members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, leans forward. That's a very aggressive timeline. What's your confidence level? David doesn't hesitate. High. We've analyzed comparable implementations, and the data supports this approach. I bite my tongue so hard I taste blood. The data doesn't support this approach. The data screams that this timeline is impossible, that promising these results will set everyone up for failure. Excellent, Jennifer says. And what about the Meridian account? David moves to the next presentation, and I realize with growing horror that it's another one of my analyses. The market penetration study I spent 2 months building. He's presenting it like it's his own work, stumbling through technical details he doesn't understand, making promises based on projections he didn't create. The board members are asking good questions, the kind that require deep knowledge of the methodology. David's giving surface-level answers, the kind that sound impressive but don't actually mean anything. The key insight, David explains, is that Meridian's market share erosion isn't random. It follows predictable patterns that we can reverse with targeted interventions. Predictable patterns. He's using my exact phrase, describing my regression analysis like it's his own discovery. I watch Jennifer's face as she processes this information, see the wheels turning as she considers the implications. How confident are you in these projections? She asks. Very confident, David replies. The modeling is sophisticated and the results are clear. The modeling is sophisticated. Because I built it. Because I spent weeks testing different variables, running sensitivity analyses, validating assumptions. But he's presenting it like it's his own work, and everyone in the room is buying it. I feel something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, but something colder, more focused. I've been waiting for the right moment, the perfect opening, but I'm starting to realize that the right moment might not come. It might have to be created. David continues through 2 more presentations, both based on my work, both presented as his own insights. With each slide, I feel more invisible, more erased, but I also feel more certain about what I have to do. So, in summary, David concludes, we're looking at 3 major opportunities with aggressive timelines and high-impact results. The data supports immediate action on all 3 fronts. The data supports immediate action, except it doesn't. The data supports a careful, phased approach with realistic timelines and contingency planning. But David's version sounds more exciting, more confident, more likely to get approved. Jennifer looks around the table. Questions? Comments? The silver-haired board member speaks up. I'm impressed by the scope of this analysis. How long did this take to develop? About 3 months of intensive work, David replies. But the insights are worth it. 3 months. He's not technically lying. I did spend 3 months on this analysis, but he's allowing everyone to believe he did the work, that these insights came from his intensive efforts. I'm ready to move forward, another board member says. These recommendations align perfectly with our growth objectives. Agreed, Jennifer says. David, I want you to prepare implementation plans for all 3 accounts. Let's target... Excuse me. The words come out before I can stop them, before I can second-guess myself into silence. I thought you might want to see these projections before deciding. The room goes quiet. Every head turns toward me, some with curiosity, others with annoyance. David's face flushes red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I stand up, my legs somehow steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. I walk to the front of the room, manila folder in hand, and place it directly in front of Jennifer. Maya, David says, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I don't think this is the appropriate time for... Actually, Jennifer interrupts, opening the folder. I'd like to see what Maya has prepared. The silence is deafening. I can hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Jennifer flips through the pages, her expression unreadable. The board members crane their necks to see what she's looking at. These are comprehensive, Jennifer says after a moment. Timeline analyses, risk assessments, sensitivity modeling. She looks up at me. Whose numbers are these? The question hangs in the air like a challenge. I can feel David's panic, Marcus's disapproval, the collective discomfort of a room full of people who aren't used to having their assumptions questioned. They're mine, I say, my voice steady and clear. Jennifer studies me for a long moment, then looks back at the folder. Please walk us through them. Please walk us through them. 4 words that feel like a door opening, like justice finally arriving, like 3 years of invisibility about to end. I look around the room, meeting each pair of eyes deliberately. David, whose face has gone from red to pale. Marcus, who's shaking his head in disbelief. Sarah, who looks torn between admiration and fear. The board members, who are leaning forward with genuine interest. And Jennifer, who's waiting for me to speak. I take a breath, feeling the weight of this moment. 3 years of being ignored, interrupted, overlooked. 3 years of watching my work get presented by other people. 3 years of being told I'm too intense, too aggressive, too difficult. All of that ends now. The first thing you need to understand, I begin, my voice carrying to every corner of the room, is that the timelines you just approved are impossible to achieve without significant risk to all three accounts. I watch David's face crumble as I continue. The Henderson implementation requires a minimum of 12 months for sustainable results. The Meridian strategy needs 18 months to show meaningful market share recovery. And the Patterson account, I pause, looking directly at Jennifer. The Patterson account requires a complete rethink of our approach, because the current strategy has a 73% probability of failure. The room is dead silent. No one is checking their phones. No one is whispering to their neighbors. For the first time in 3 years, everyone is listening to me. The analysis David presented is based on my data, but it's been simplified. The real picture is more complex, more nuanced, and requires a different approach entirely. I open my own copy of the folder, turning to the first page of detailed projections. These are the numbers you need to make an informed decision. Not the numbers you want to hear, but the numbers that reflect reality. Jennifer is nodding slowly, comparing my analysis to the presentations she just heard. The board members are taking notes, asking follow-up questions, treating my work with the seriousness it deserves. And David? David is sitting in stunned silence, finally understanding what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people who matter. Maya, Jennifer says after I finish explaining the risk matrices, how long have you been working on this analysis? 3 months, I reply, and I see David flinch at the honesty. These are the projections I've been trying to share for the past several weeks. And why haven't we seen this before? It's a loaded question, one that could end careers depending on how I answer it. I look around the room again, seeing the faces of people who have ignored me, dismissed me, treated me like I was invisible. Because, I say carefully, I haven't been presenting. The implication hangs in the air. Jennifer gets it immediately. She's smart enough to understand what I'm really saying without me having to spell it out. The board members are exchanging glances, putting pieces together. Well, Jennifer says, closing the folder, you're presenting now. She looks around the room, her gaze lingering on David, then Marcus, then back to me. I want to see revised implementation plans based on Maya's analysis, timeline, resource allocation, risk mitigation, everything. Maya will prepare that, David says quickly, trying to regain some control of the situation. No, Jennifer says firmly, Maya will present that, to me, next week, along with her recommendations for team leadership on these accounts. Team leadership. The words hit the room like a bomb. I see the exact moment when everyone realizes what's happening, when they understand that the invisible woman in the corner just became the most visible person in the company. That's all for today, Jennifer announces. Maya, please stay behind. Everyone else, thank you for your time. The room empties slowly, with lots of meaningful looks and whispered conversations. David lingers near the door, clearly wanting to say something, but Jennifer's presence keeps him quiet. Marcus shoots me a look that's part admiration, part warning. When we're alone, Jennifer turns to me with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Maya, how long have you been carrying this company's analytical work? It's a question that cuts to the heart of everything. The invisibility, the credit stealing, the systematic erasure of my contributions. But it's also a question that signals change, that acknowledges what's been happening and promises that it won't continue. 3 years, I say simply. And how long have you been waiting for someone to notice? 3 years. Jennifer nods, as if this confirms something she already suspected. Well, they're noticing now. She stands up, gathering her materials. I want to see you in my office tomorrow morning. We need to discuss your role going forward, and the changes we're going to make to ensure this doesn't happen again. As she walks toward the door, she pauses. Maya, those numbers you just presented, they're exactly what this company needs. Not the numbers that make us feel good about ourselves, but the ones that keep us from making expensive mistakes. After she leaves, I sit alone in the conference room, surrounded by the aftermath of the most important presentation of my career. My hands are shaking slightly, the adrenaline finally catching up with me. I think about my grandmother, who never had her name on anything she built. About my sister, who's going to want to hear every detail of this story. About 3 years of being ignored and 1 moment of finally being seen. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, I stop being invisible. But today, for the first time in 3 years, when someone asked whose numbers these were, I got to answer, they're mine. I stand up slowly, deliberately, taking a moment to arrange my notes in front of me. The silence in the room is thick, expectant. Every face is turned toward me, but for the first time, it doesn't feel like scrutiny. It feels like attention, the kind I've earned but never received. Thank you, I say, looking directly at Jennifer before scanning the room. I want to start by acknowledging that the presentations you just heard contain valuable insights. However, the underlying assumptions and projected timelines require significant adjustment based on a more comprehensive data analysis. I click to my first slide, a comparison chart showing David's projected timelines alongside my risk-adjusted recommendations. The difference is stark, undeniable. The Henderson Industries implementation timeline that was just presented assumes optimal conditions at every phase. When we factor in realistic variables, regulatory approval delays, internal resistance to change, technical integration challenges, the probability of success drops to 23%. I pause, letting that number sink in. Around the table, I can see board members processing the implications. A 23% success rate on a $40 million account isn't a risk, it's corporate suicide. However, I continue, with a phased approach over 14 months, we can achieve an 89% probability of success, with measurable results beginning in month 6. The silver-haired board member, I learned her name is Dr. Patricia Wynn, leans forward. What specific variables are you accounting for that weren't addressed in the original timeline? This is exactly the kind of question I've been preparing for my entire career. Not the surface-level queries that can be answered with buzzwords, but the technical details that separate real analysis from PowerPoint theater. 3 primary categories, I reply, clicking to my methodology slide. First, regulatory compliance. Henderson operates in pharmaceutical manufacturing, which requires FDA approval for any significant process changes. Historical data shows an average approval time of 127 days, with a standard deviation of 31 days. The original timeline allocated 30 days for this phase. I watch David's face as I speak. He's trying to maintain composure, but I can see the moment he realizes how thoroughly his presentation is being dismantled. Second, change management resistance. I analyze data from 8 comparable transformations in the pharmaceutical sector. Employee resistance peaks at month 3 and doesn't stabilize until month 7. Attempting to push through major changes during peak resistance periods increases failure rates by 340%. Dr. Wynn is taking notes now, and so are the other board members. Jennifer's expression is unreadable, but she's giving me the kind of focused attention I've never received in this building. Third, technical integration complexity. Henderson's legacy systems weren't designed for the kind of real-time data sharing that our efficiency improvements require. Based on similar integrations I've studied, this process takes an average of 8.3 months, not the 2 months allocated in the original timeline. Maya, Jennifer interrupts, walk us through the financial implications of these timeline differences. I click to my financial impact analysis, the slide I'm most proud of, the one that took 2 weeks to build and validate. The original timeline projects $12 million in efficiency savings by month 8. However, if we fail to meet those targets, due to the implementation challenges I've outlined, Henderson will experience $8 million in additional costs from disrupted operations and incomplete system migrations. The room is completely silent now. I can hear the HVAC system, the distant hum of traffic, my own heartbeat. But no one is whispering, no one is checking their phones, everyone is listening. By contrast, the extended timeline I'm proposing achieves $15 million in efficiency savings by month 14, with interim cost reductions beginning in month 6. The net present value is actually 23% higher than the aggressive timeline, despite the longer implementation period. Because you're avoiding the costs of failure, Dr. Wynn observes. Exactly. We're optimizing for sustainable success rather than impressive presentation slides. I see several people shift uncomfortably at that comment. It's a direct shot at the culture of overpromising that pervades this company, and everyone knows it. Now, regarding the Meridian account, I continue, clicking to my next analysis. The market share recovery projections assume that Meridian's decline is purely operational. However, my analysis shows that 60% of their market share loss is due to evolving consumer preferences that their current product line can't address. I watch as Marcus, who helped develop the original Meridian strategy, tries to maintain a neutral expression. His jaw is tight, his hands clasped so firmly that his knuckles are white. This means that operational efficiency improvements, while valuable, will only recover about 40% of their lost market position. To achieve the full recovery that was just projected, Meridian would need to either acquire new capabilities or develop entirely new product lines, neither of which was included in the original analysis. Jennifer looks up from her notes. What would you recommend for Meridian? A 2-phase approach. Phase 1 focuses on operational improvements to stabilize their current position and recover that 40% we can realistically target. Phase 2 involves strategic partnerships or acquisitions to address the evolving market demands. Total timeline, 18 months instead of 8. but with a 78% probability of achieving the projected results. I click through 3 more slides, each one methodically deconstructing the presentations that came before mine, not with malice or personal attacks, but with data. Numbers don't lie, trends don't have agendas, and probability calculations don't care about office politics. Finally, the Patterson expansion strategy. I pause here, because this is where my analysis diverges most dramatically from what the room just heard. The proposed approach assumes that Patterson's success in the Northeast market will translate directly to the Southwest. However, demographic analysis shows fundamental differences in customer behavior, regulatory environments, and competitive landscapes. I bring up a map showing Patterson's current market penetration overlaid with demographic data. Patterson's Northeast success is built on serving a customer base that's 67% urban, with an average household income of $89,000 and a preference for premium service offerings. The Southwest target market is 43% rural, with an average household income of $64,000 and a demonstrated preference for value-oriented services. Dr. Wynn is nodding now, clearly following my logic. So the same approach won't work. Worse than that, it's likely to fail spectacularly. Based on comparable market entries, there's a 73% probability that Patterson's Northeast model will lose money in the Southwest within the first year. I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. However, with a modified approach that accounts for these market differences, we can achieve a 67% probability of profitability by month 14, with break-even occurring in month 9. When I finish, the room stays quiet for a long moment. Jennifer is reviewing her notes, the board members are processing the information, and my colleagues are trying to figure out how to react to having their work systematically disproven. Questions? I ask, the way David did 40 minutes ago when he thought he owned the room. Dr. Wynn raises her hand slightly. Maya, how long did this analysis take you to complete? About 3 months of primary research, plus ongoing monitoring of the relevant data streams for the past year. And this is the first time we're seeing it? The question hangs in the air like an accusation, not directed at me, but at the system that kept my work invisible for so long. This is the first time I've been asked to present it. I reply carefully. Jennifer closes her notebook and looks around the table. I think we have everything we need for now. Maya, excellent work. I'd like to see implementation plans based on your analysis. Timeline, resource allocation, team structure. Can you have that ready by Friday? Yes. Good. Everyone else, thank you for your time. Maya, please stay behind for a moment. The room empties slowly with careful glances and hushed conversations. David packs his materials with mechanical precision, his face a mask of controlled humiliation. Marcus stops at the door, looks back at me, then shakes his head and leaves. Dr. Wynn approaches as she's leaving. Maya, that was exceptional analysis. I hope we'll be seeing more of your work in future meetings. Thank you, Dr. Wynn. When everyone else is gone, Jennifer and I are alone in the conference room. She's still seated, reviewing her notes, while I remain standing at the front of the room. How long have you been doing this level of analysis? She asks without looking up. Since I started here, 3 years. And how often have you presented it? Today was the first time. She finally looks up, and I see something in her expression that might be anger. Not at me, but at the situation. Maya, I want you to understand something. What just happened in this room was exceptional, but it shouldn't have been extraordinary. This is the level of analysis I expect from our strategic team, and the fact that we've been operating without it is concerning. I remain silent, unsure how to respond. Is she criticizing me for not speaking up sooner? Acknowledging systemic problems? Planning changes? I'm going to be very direct with you, she continues. There are going to be significant changes in how this company operates, and I want to know if you're interested in being part of implementing those changes. What kind of changes? The kind that ensure our best analytical minds are actually involved in strategic decision-making. The kind that prevent us from making $40 million mistakes because someone was too polite to challenge flawed assumptions. She stands up, gathering her materials. Think about it. We'll talk more tomorrow. As she heads toward the door, I clear my throat. Jennifer? She turns back. I don't need to think about it. I'm interested. She smiles, the first genuine smile I've seen from her all day. Good. My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. And Maya, bring your recommendations for organizational changes. Not just analytical improvements, but structural ones. After she leaves, I pack up my materials in the empty conference room. 3 years of preparation for one 40-minute presentation, and everything has changed. I'm gathering my folders when David appears in the doorway. He's loosened his tie, and there's something defeated in his posture that I've never seen before. Maya, he says, stepping into the room. Nice job today. Surprised me. I stop packing and look at him directly. The same man who's been taking credit for my work for 3 years, who told me I was too intense, too difficult, too focused on being right. I wasn't trying to surprise you, I reply, my voice calm and level. I was doing my job. The words hit him like a physical blow. I can see him processing the implication that if my job performance surprised him, it's because he never bothered to notice it before. Right, he says after a moment. Well, good presentation. He starts to leave, then turns back. Maya, for what it's worth, I never meant to. I didn't realize. David, I interrupt. I think we both know exactly what you realized and when you realized it. He nods slowly, the last pretense of plausible deniability finally crumbling. Yeah, we do. After he's gone, I sit alone in the conference room for a few more minutes, processing what just happened. 3 years of being invisible, and 40 minutes to change everything. My phone buzzes with a text from my sister. How's the corporate life treating you today? I stare at the message for a moment, then type back, much better than yesterday. That sounds mysterious. Call me later? Definitely. I have a story to tell you. I pack up the last of my materials and head toward the elevator. Tomorrow, I'll meet with Jennifer to discuss organizational changes. Tomorrow, I'll start building a company where analytical excellence gets the recognition it deserves. But today, I finally got to answer the question I've been waiting 3 years to hear. Whose numbers are these? And my answer, they're mine, just changed everything. Jennifer's office is nothing like I expected. While the conference rooms downstairs are all glass and steel, designed to intimidate, her space feels more human. Books line the walls, not just business texts, but literature, history, biographies. There's a photo of her with her family, another of her receiving some kind of industry award, and a small plant that looks well cared for on the windowsill. Please sit, she says, gesturing to one of 2 chairs facing her desk. She pours herself coffee from a thermos and offers me some, which I decline. My nerves are still too raw for caffeine. Maya, I want to start by acknowledging something, she begins, settling into her chair. What happened in that meeting wasn't just good analysis. It was exceptional strategic thinking presented with clarity and precision, the kind of work that shapes company direction. I nod, unsure where this conversation is heading, but I also want to acknowledge something else, she continues, her tone becoming more serious. I've been watching, for months. I've seen how you're treated in meetings, how your contributions are received, or not received. I've watched your work get presented by other people while you sit in corners taking notes on your own ideas. The words hit me like a physical blow, but not in a painful way. More like validation after years of questioning my own perceptions. Why didn't you say anything? I ask. Jennifer leans back in her chair, considering her answer carefully. Because I needed your competence to be impossible to ignore. I needed a moment where your expertise was so undeniable, so clearly superior, that no one could pretend they hadn't seen it. She pauses, looking out the window at the city skyline. You were never invisible to me, Maya. I just needed everyone else to catch up. You were never invisible to me. The words settle into a place in my chest that's been aching for 3 years. A place I didn't even realize was there until the pain started to ease. I've been watching you build analysis that saves this company millions of dollars while getting credit for none of it, she continues. I've watched you sit quietly while less qualified people make strategic decisions based on incomplete information, and I've been waiting for the right moment to change that. Yesterday was the right moment. Yesterday was the moment you decided to make for yourself, which tells me everything I need to know about your readiness for what I'm about to offer you. She opens a folder on her desk, pulling out several documents. Maya, I want you to head up a new division, Strategic Analytics and Implementation. You'd have a team of 5 analysts reporting to you, with direct input on all major account strategies and company-wide decision-making. I stare at the documents she's sliding across the desk. Organizational charts, budget allocations, a job description with my name already typed at the top. This isn't a promotion within the existing structure, she explains. This is creating a new structure built around ensuring that analytical excellence drives strategic decisions, not the other way around. The offer is everything I've wanted, everything I've worked toward. But I don't smile immediately. I don't feel the rush of euphoria I expected. Instead, I feel something heavier, more complex. I think about 3 years of emails that went unanswered, meetings where I was interrupted mid-sentence, presentations where my work was credited to other people, the constant self-doubt, the voice in my head asking if I was imagining the dismissal, if I was being too sensitive, too difficult. Maya, Jennifer's voice brings me back to the present. I'm thinking, I say, still processing the weight of this moment. What are you thinking about? About how long I've been ready for this opportunity. About how many times I've proven myself to people who weren't paying attention. Jennifer nods slowly. And? and about how I'm accepting this position not because I need validation, but because this company needs what I bring to it. I pick up the pen she's placed next to the documents and sign my name with steady hands. Not because I'm grateful for finally being seen, but because I'm claiming what was always mine. When do I start? I ask. Monday. Your first task is to rebuild the Henderson, Meridian, and Patterson strategies from the ground up. Timeline, budget, team assignments, everything. And David? Jennifer's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in her eyes. David will be transitioning to a different role, one more suited to his actual capabilities. We spend the next hour discussing logistics, budget authority, reporting structures, team building. Jennifer explains that she's been planning this reorganization for months, waiting for the right person to lead it. Maya, can I ask you something personal? I nod. How did you maintain your standards all this time? How did you keep producing excellent work while being systematically overlooked? It's a question I've never been asked directly, and I consider it carefully before answering, because the work mattered more than the recognition, because I knew that eventually the numbers would speak for themselves, and because I pause thinking about my grandmother, about the generations of Black women who did essential work without acknowledgement. Because excellence doesn't require an audience, but an audience eventually requires excellence. Jennifer smiles. The first time today it reaches her eyes. That's exactly why you're the right person for this role. As I gather the paperwork and prepare to leave, she says one more thing. Maya, I know this should have happened sooner. I know you shouldn't have had to prove yourself so many times to so many people. But I want you to know that your persistence, your refusal to compromise your standards, that's leadership. And this company is about to benefit from that leadership in ways they can't even imagine. 3 months later, the morning strategy meeting starts at 9 a.m. sharp, but I'm here early, reviewing final numbers for the Henderson implementation. My team, 2 data scientists, 2 market analysts, and a project coordinator, has already submitted their sections of the quarterly report. Working with people who actually listen when I speak, who build on my ideas instead of stealing them, has been a revelation. Maya, do you have the updated projections for Patterson? Jennifer asks as she takes her seat at the head of the table. Henderson is running 12% ahead of our revised projections, I report. Meridian achieved break-even 2 weeks early, and Patterson's Southwest expansion is exceeding targets in 4 of 5 test markets. Around the table, I see the faces of people who used to ignore me. David isn't here. He's been reassigned to client relations, a role with less strategic responsibility and significantly less visibility. Marcus nods respectfully when I present data. Sarah has become one of my strongest advocates, often citing my team's analysis in her own presentations. Questions? I ask after walking through the quarterly results. Dr. Wynn, who now sits on my advisory board, raises her hand. Maya, the Peterson Industries opportunity that came up last week. What's your initial assessment? We need 2 weeks for comprehensive analysis, but preliminary review suggests significant potential with manageable risk. I'll have the full report ready for the next board meeting. Excellent. Jennifer, I'd like to recommend that Maya present directly to the board on this one. Present directly to the board. 6 months ago, I wasn't allowed to speak in strategy meetings. Now I'm presenting to the people who determine company direction. After the meeting, Marcus approaches as I'm packing up my materials. Maya, quick question about the efficiency metrics you mentioned for Henderson. Could your team run a similar analysis for the Williams account? I look at him for a moment. The same man who once told me that being right wasn't as important as being strategic. Now he's asking for my analysis, acknowledging my expertise, treating me like the expert I've always been. Send me the account details. We'll have something for you by Friday. Thanks. Your team's work has been really impressive. As he walks away, I think about how different this interaction feels. Not because he's being more respectful, though he is, but because I'm no longer seeking his validation. I'm providing a service he needs from a position of established authority. Later that afternoon, I'm in my office reviewing budget allocations when my assistant buzzes in. Maya, your 3 o'clock is here. Jennifer enters, closing the door behind her. How was your first board presentation last week? Good. They approved the Peterson strategy and asked me to present quarterly analytics going forward. And how does it feel? Being heard? I consider the question. 6 months ago, I would have said it feels validating, empowering, like justice finally being served. But the reality is more nuanced. It feels normal, I say finally. Like this is how it should have been all along. Jennifer nods approvingly. That's the right answer. When excellence becomes the standard instead of the exception, that's when real change happens. After she leaves, I sit alone in my office. My office, with my name on the door and my team's work covering the walls. Through the window, I can see the city where I've been building my career, one ignored insight at a time. I think about the woman who walked into that conference room 3 months ago with a manila folder and nothing to lose, who decided that being invisible was no longer acceptable, who spoke up not because she was confident it would work, but because staying silent was no longer possible. My phone rings. It's my sister, calling for our weekly check-in. "How's the corporate life treating you these days?" she asks, the same question she's been asking for 3 years. "I'm treating it pretty well," I reply. "That sounds different. You sound different." I look around my office, at the organizational chart showing 5 people who report to me, at the calendar full of meetings where my input is requested, not tolerated. I am different, but I think I'm finally who I was always supposed to be here, which is someone who gets listened to when she speaks. After we hang up, I review my calendar for tomorrow. 2 strategy meetings, a team check-in, a call with the Peterson Industries executives, a day full of people who want to hear what I have to say because they've learned that what I have to say matters. I think about the dozens of women like me who are still sitting in corners of conference rooms, watching their work get presented by other people, wondering if they're imagining the dismissal. I think about the analysis that goes unheard, the insights that get ignored, the excellence that remains invisible. But I also think about the fact that change is possible, that systems built to overlook can be rebuilt to recognize, that persistence and competence, combined with the right moment and the right opportunity, can shift everything. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. And in doing so, I created space not just for myself, but for everyone who comes after me. Everyone who has something valuable to say and the expertise to back it up. Everyone who has been waiting for someone to ask whose numbers these are. Because when they do ask, we'll be ready to answer, they're mine. And that answer will change everything.